Robert, do you have a favorite manufacturer for top quality performance pianos, and why?
You know, as I said, today there just are two companies left, and I should mention there is a third relative newcomer, Charles Walter in Indiana, who builds about 60 pianos a year. Mason & Hamlin and Steinway are the others, and altogether they're only making less than 2,000 pianos. They're both great pianos, but you know, my favorites are, it comes down to the individual piano. And Bechstein and Baldwin and Knabe, all these companies from years ago, even A.B. Chase, companies you haven't heard of, Conover, Hazelton. You know, when there were 1,800 piano manufacturers, you got to figure that there had to be at least a couple of dozen that were top-notch instruments, and each one has its own personality. Like if you were a family and you had 7 kids and you said, well, who's your favorite? You know, you couldn't do that. And with pianos, I might sit down and play the exact same piece on 3 or 4 pianos downstairs, and I wouldn't even approach the pieces the same way. They inspire different performances. And perhaps I like a Bechstein for Mozart, and maybe I prefer a Mason & Hamlin for Brahms. So it's very difficult to pinpoint one instrument. And then each manufacturer, depending upon the era that piano was made, might be better or worse, depending upon what the standards were, who was building the pianos at the time, where they sourced their soundboards and other materials.
Right. So the same brand during the different years?
Dramatically different. Oh. Like for example, Steinway was bought by CBS in the 1960s, and the quality of the instruments in the 60s and particularly the 70s was no match for what they were doing, particularly prior to World War II, when they really had competition and they were producing phenomenal instruments. And in the 70s, they even experimented with Teflon bushings in their actions, which caused problems. And so, you know, Baldwin at the same time, just as a footnote, Baldwin purchased Bechstein in the 1960s, and their quality in the 60s and 70s was unparalleled. And then, you know, well, they all have their ups and downs. Mason & Hamlin had a bankruptcy in the 90s. Their quality really deteriorated, and now they're coming back in the ownership of Piano Disc. So you have to really know what was going on in the companies.
Yeah, but it's now, isn't now Steinway back on the high standard?
Steinway, you know, is making very, very good pianos. Personally, though, whenever I perform and I go to schools and I see they have an old Steinway and a new Steinway, most of the time, the old ones seem to have more soul, more character. And perhaps, you know, one facet is these instruments do need to age to a certain extent. New out of the box, the Steinway is rarely as good as it's going to get.
Yeah. My experience, I'm coming from Europe, of course, and we are used to the German Steinways, and I always loved them. And I studied at the conservatory in Milan, and we used to have old Steinways everywhere, grand pianos.
Right.
When I came here in the US, I thought Steinway was the same, but actually they are completely different kind of pianos.
There are notable differences. The action of New York Steinway is completely different from the action of a Hamburg Steinway. Hamburg uses a Renner action, whereas New York builds their own action. The soundboards are also a little bit thicker in the Hamburg Steinway, so there's a little bit more resistance, not to the feel, but to the tone to get them. But, you know, then, you know, it's hard to generalize, because you could go right now at the Steinway Hall and play 3 different Model Bs, and they'll all be dramatically different. These are handmade instruments. It's not like a Yamaha, where you play a C7, you play 5 of them, and the differences between them are very, very small, because the manufacturing is much more precise.
Yeah, sure.
But the benefit of a hand-built piano is when you find the one that you like, it might be that instrument that really suits you, that's a personal connection.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll talk about Yamaha later on.